the fear that inevitably rises when we are given to this work is a legitimate one. And the best strategy is not to run away from it or try to shun it, but to face it. Face it with clarity of understanding. So first is where this fear arising from. All fear is based on the fear of death, one way or the other. And the fear itself arises from the notion that we are endangered. The fear arises from the notion that we can be harmed. But we're not talking about now the danger associated with not wanting to burn our hand if we put it into the fire. This is obvious. The reflex will tell us to remove. The hand will jerk off. Don't need to think there. In the same way, every person, when all the faculties are intact, jerks off the situations which are dangerous, isn't it? It's normal. But the psychological fear, or the fear rooted in the psychology, where we consider ourselves as mortal beings, is the basis of all fear known to human being. This is the first understanding, so that we go to the root of that. And then, of course, it has various ways of how it is experienced and what are the reasons and so forth. But that fear of our mortality, or rather fear of ceasing to exist, causes this. Likewise, when there is a clear understanding that the nature of our being is immortal, the nature of our being cannot cease because it was never born, introduces that healthy psychological ground. It introduces that healthy psychological background. Even though we will do everything to preserve ourselves, because that also in the nature of having the body. The bodies run on the reflexes. Our brains are not just one mass. Our brains made of several brains. From the most primitive reptilian brain, size of a walnut, in turn covered with another thicker layer of brain like a bean shape, which is the much more complex system, much more complex structure, which allows us to feel, emote, to the much larger area of the brain mass, which allows us to think, comprehend, analyze, discern, discriminate. And of course, that part of the brain, the prefrontal lobes, which introduces the possibility to transcend. So in other words, it's very good to understand that even physiologically we are wired to transcend. Even on the level of the cellular structure, this organism is wired to transcend. It's not like we're developing new brain. It's already within the capacity of this brain. It's just that essentially area of the brain needs to be lit up, because very often it's in dormancy, literally in dormancy. Prefrontal lobes is very different part of the brain than amygdala. Very different. All this part deals with reflexes, information, cortexes, all these electrical responses required to function. This part of the brain has nothing to do with function. It's all about transcending the experience. Transcending. Likewise, it is here where the primitive impulses of the earlier brain formation are being transcended. Various traditions speak of that short distance, one step between the primitive brain and the complex brain. In yogic scriptures, it is exemplified by the rekindling of the certain glands, rekindling of certain points in the brain, certain points which allow that bridge, a quantum leap, no less, where we literally are trampolined into a qualitatively different mode of existence, upgrading the system from the system which functions on and runs on the reflexes very much and instincts for survival into a qualitatively different operating system, if you will, where it carries within itself a very clear frequency which transcends into subtle understanding of the immortal nature of our being, which temporarily dwells in the body, nothing more, nothing less. It's transiting, checking in into the hotel, if you will, a spa, whatever you want, Shangri-La, 5 stars, 3 stars, 2 stars, whatever. Right? 3-day stay, 300 years stay, who cares? It's just that stay, temporal stay. Do we cry when we leave the hotel room? Do we like suddenly fall on the floor and run, grab to the carpet and start burying our face into the pillow? I'm leaving this room now. No, we don't. We have the best time there. It's a hotel, it's taken care of. It's temporal stay, why shall I worry? Attitude is everything. Right attitude is more so. This is a healthy relationship with being in the body. It's a healthy attitude of being in the body, in that acceptance. Okay, that's fine, that's great. Why not? Let's see what happens. Let's have some play here. My nature is never limited. I'm myself. Let's see how it feels to be in a human body. Of course, this is a dialogue when the prefrontal lobes are fully lit. Transcendence is what instructs us. Before that, of course, there's a tendency to be instructed by all the other structure of the brain. When we are at our lowest, that primitive reptilian brain, fight, flight, or freeze, and we all know how it feels. Or that part which is all essentially based on that, being dominated by excessive thinking, overly analytical, and constantly comparing, dissecting, or being subjected to the overwhelming flood of emotions constantly. This is all fine. This is what it means to be a human. Or, shall we make a little adjustments? That's what it means to have human experience. Instead of actually thinking of ourselves as being a human, how about we call it what it means to have a human experience? That's what that is, to have a human experience. As consciousness, every single one of us are going through that experience. Being a human being. But if the identity is solely with the matter, with the body, with the temporal conglomerate, fear is a constant accompany, is a constant companion. Because this is where temporarily the emphasis is made, that's all. The emphasis is on that at the expense of the entire infinity. The finite now eclipses the infinity. It overlapped and eclipsed the infinity. The result is fear. Fear because deep down, deep down, we know that we are immortal. And that's why we cling to that continuity. But we look at it from a different perspective. We look at it from the perspective of this psychoorganism. And from that perspective, it's very scary because it will come to an end. Therefore, the base of fear here is, of course, in that pact that consciousness temporarily makes as it undergoes this experience of being human. And the biggest fear, of course, here, from the psychological point of view, it's the fear of losing one's individuality.